enough interesting things that happened that I thought, this really is the trees talking to me, right? That anytime I would go to great lengths to get a piece of trash, right? Like scamper down an embankment or do something, reach through a barbed wire fence or something.
Heroic.
Right? I was like, okay, I'll climb all the way down there and get that, piece of plastic. But if I would do that, I would turn around after picking it up and there would be like a beautiful feather right in my path, right? Where I would be like, I was just right. I just walked here. There's no way I would have missed the feather where I would have seen it, right? And so it started feeling like these little gifts that they were giving me and saying thank you.
Welcome to the Enchanted Earth Podcast, where you will hear stories of nature with the power to transform our lives. These sacred stories are begging to be shared now. So listen in as my guest today shares one of their own.
So welcome, everybody. Today we have with us Amy Lamm, and let me tell you a little bit about Amy. She believes in the healing power of the earth. What began as openly sharing her spiritual journey on her blog, Following Hawks, has become a resource for others wanting to learn how to communicate with nature and share their own unique healing gifts with the earth. Amy is also founder of the Earth Tenders Academy, an earth-based shamanic school to help others reestablish their connection with their ancient ancestors, learn to communicate with the seen and unseen forces in their environment, and respectfully offer their healing energy to places in need. So welcome, Amy.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to chat today.
Oh, awesome. Now you have a robust Instagram following, and I am one of the followers. And I just really love your posts and really felt a deep resonance with the work that you do. And we're I think, closely aligned, maybe coming at it a little differently. I do dowsing, but I think what you're offering here is just a beautiful, necessary service to help others really develop that connection that has been so terribly lost in today's modern world.
It's true. And I am so honored to be able to share what I have learned with others as well in this way, because it's enriched my life in ways that I can't even describe or imagine, not having in retrospect. And so, so many of us just didn't have this opportunity as children growing up to learn to connect with the natural world in this way. And so whenever it is, it comes into our life and we feel called back to it, I'm happy to connect in that way.
Well, you just created a perfect segue for me for my first question that I ask almost all of my guests. And that is, can you tell us a little bit about the land that raised you and your sense of nature connection or not as a child?
Sure. Well, I would say there were kind of two different lands, specifically in my childhood anyway, that raised me. But in both cases, I grew up on a sheep farm. And so being connected with nature, being outside was just something that I did every day and didn't really think about. It was part of my day-to-day life. And so I think there was probably a lot there in my childhood. I remember laying in the clover pastures, for hours on end and staring at the clouds moving by and feeling really called to the oak trees and to spend time with them as a child. But it didn't feel as, I guess, maybe magical as we might say. And I don't recall as a child having connection with like fairies and beings and those types of things. But I was very connected with nature and just, spending a lot of my time outside. So from about kindergarten till 6th grade, we lived in one location. It was actually a former fig orchard that was a smaller plot of land. And again, that was, where I spent a lot of time just kind of laying out in the pastures and spending time like that. And then in the middle of my 6th grade year, we moved on to 12 acres of rolling hills and beautiful old oak trees that I just felt so connected with and still do. I don't live in the same area where I grew up anymore, but when I go back, I just feel such a deep kinship to the oak trees immediately. I just feel so emotional as soon as I see them. again and feel connected in that way. So I think that it's really interesting to think back to all of those beings that were there and with me all along, but that really didn't step in a strong way until I was an adult.
Interesting. I feel like there's a lot of resonance with my childhood too. It was there, I was in it, but there wasn't that magical connection that some people are so lucky to have as children.
Truly, truly.
So I'm just curious, where in the world are you? And where did you grow up?
Yeah, I grew up in the foothills of Northern California, just outside of the Sacramento area. And then as an adult, I moved to Northwest Montana for about a decade. And then about 2 years, just over 2 years ago, I moved to Northwest Arkansas into the Ozarks. And so completely different climate, completely different
Wow.
setting. And what I actually did was drive around in a motorhome for 6 months all over the country. And I was really looking for
Wow.
a specific feeling, a specific type of town. But I didn't know what it was and I didn't know where it was. And when I landed in this town that I'm in now, I was just so taken by it. And I left for a while. And I really just couldn't stop thinking about it. And I came back. And I tried to leave a couple more times and things kept happening where I was like, I think I'm supposed to stay here. I think this is the spot. But what's really magical to me here that I don't know if people who've maybe lived here their whole lives realize it because it's just here, it's just part of the landscape, is the cold springs. There are cold springs everywhere. Every town, just about this town, is named with the springs in the name. And they're just so accessible. And if you have lived somewhere, especially in the West, where there is a lack of water, to be somewhere where there is water in that way and to be able to really connect and even just touch water coming out of the earth, right? That is not something that so many of us in our modern culture have the opportunity to do. And so it's been really special here. And then, of course, just a little ways south of here is where there's the huge quartz crystal veins in the Ouachita Mountains. It's a few hours south of here, but it's like this very magical, but almost, blink and you miss it kind of a thing. If you know about it, then you know about it. But I think a lot of people don't realize like how special the water is here in particular.
And I'm sure that water's going through those crystal mountains too.
Right,
And
yeah.
getting infused with that magical frequency of the crystal energy. That is phenomenal. And yeah, I think some of us have that connection with the subtle energies that we can just feel and maybe even not consciously. I think there are people that are just like, I like it here. They can't say why, but they
Right.
just know this feels good. And other people, it's just a visual. It's completely visual, right?
Right.
So that's wonderful. I have so many questions to ask, but first I want to know, you mentioned you didn't have that magical connection until your adult life. Can you share a little bit about that, like that turning point?
Yeah, absolutely. After I moved to Montana, I would just, take kind of daily walks in my neighborhood. And before I had left California, I developed a regular meditation process. So I wasn't, fully kind of in that world, right? But I just meditated on a regular basis. And one of the strong messages that led me to Montana in the first place was really this message about being around pine trees and water. And there's much of that there as well where I was living. And so after I moved there, I would just go for walks, around the neighborhood every day. And I started feeling like somebody was talking to me, right? But I wasn't quite sure, right? It's like messages that were in my head, but they kind of sounded like me, but they weren't maybe things that I would say or that I had thought up or been thinking about. And I started piecing together that it was the trees and the messages were coming from the trees. And what they were asking initially was just that I would pick up trash while I was walking, right? And so it was kind of it was like a low stakes kind of message. Like, well, even if I'm making this up or this isn't real, there's no harm in bringing a bag and picking up trash while I'm walking, right?
Right.
And so that's what I started doing. And it was feeling like the trees were very appreciative. And as time went by, there were enough interesting things that happened that I thought, this really is the trees talking to me, right? That anytime I would go to great lengths to get a piece of trash, right? Like scamper down an embankment or, do something, reach through a barbed wire fence or something.
Heroic.
What's that?
Heroic.
Yeah, exactly.
Like you were doing a heroic.
Right. I was like, okay, I'll climb all the way down there and get that, piece of plastic. But if I would do that, I would turn around after picking it up and there would be like a beautiful feather right in my path, right? Where I would be like, I was just right. I just walked here. There's no way I would have missed the feather where I would have seen it, right? And so it started feeling like these little gifts that they were giving me and saying thank you. Or if I forgot to bring a bag, which it would happen fairly regularly, and I'd say, oh gosh, I'd get a little ways down my way. Oh, I forgot a bag today. I'm sorry. I'll bring one tomorrow. And not, whatever, 50 feet later, there would be a bag sitting on the side of the road, right? And I'm like, oh, they're giving me a bag if I forget to bring a bag, right? And so that was really kind of how it started. Of course, I didn't want to tell anybody that the trees were talking to me or that I was talking to the trees, but it also felt, what's the word I'm looking for? It didn't feel like consistent or reliable or like, I didn't know how to have a two-way conversation, right? But it was enough that I thought, if they can talk to me and I can hear them, then certainly it seems like I should be able to talk to them and they can hear me. But and that's where I got stuck for a really long time, right? Like I couldn't figure out how to do that and I couldn't find quite the right, instructions. And it's so funny to even think now that whatever, how long ago was 12, 13, 14 years ago, right? Like Instagram wasn't even like it was. There weren't reels. There weren't people talking about these things. This wasn't, it was such a niche topic to try and even just like find a book or find a resource or find somebody who could say, oh, it works like this. This is how you do it. So it was a long process for me, but that was really how it started and how I started just trusting that, like, okay, I think this is probably really happening. And I think probably I could talk to them too.
Wow. Yes. And it is astonishing to think, just about 15 years ago, this was so niche. This was so obscure.
Right.
And now there's so many people on social media talking about this deep, profound connection with Mother Nature. And it's, sometimes we have to sit back and go, okay, things are shifting. More and more people are stepping up. They're waking up. They're realizing this beautiful part of our human right that we've just ignored for so long. So we are making progress, I guess, is what I'm saying. And that's so wonderful to consider. So, wow. Okay. So you started that conversation, then what?
Well, like I said, I was kind of stuck there for a while. Like I would go, sit outside and look at a tree and be like, what do I do now? Like, how do I do this? And it kind of came out, in bits and pieces and chunks, over a couple of years, where actually one of the most striking things that happened was when I decided to take Reiki training. The training was at the teacher's home, but she had like a second, house on the property where she would do trainings and people could stay and whatnot. And when I pulled in the driveway, there was this just most remarkable willow tree that I'd ever seen. Like I was so distracted by this tree that, that now I know, like when you have a reaction like that, like that's the tree. Like, hello, I have something to say. But I maybe didn't even say hello. I was just like, well, tell me about this tree. When I tell, this tree is magical. But then the next day when we started the actual training, every time I closed my eye, every time I, went into meditation or, tried to focus on whatever we were learning, there was the willow tree yakking away at me. And I was like, be quiet. Stop talking to me. I'm trying to focus, right? Like, I can't listen to you right now. And it was so insistent and so distracting after, the first morning or whatnot and it wanted me to share a message. And now I wrote about it tomorrow on my blog. I can't remember the message now, but it had specific messages for the people, who were caretaking the property. And it was just going to be relentless until I passed the message along. And so that was the first time that I actually had to say out loud to somebody that I really didn't know very well. So your tree outside really wants me to share something with you and also to trust myself that like, am I getting this message correctly? Am I passing this along correctly? But I did it. And she was so appreciative and so like, yes, that totally resonates. I totally understand. And there were some things that the tree wanted, shifted or changed. And once I passed the message along, then it was quiet. Then it like left me alone basically to focus on what I was doing for the rest of the weekend. But that was probably a big piece, kind of early on that made me feel like, okay, I am getting this correct, or I am, getting these messages and I can share it with other people and they won't think that I've, totally lost my mind. And ultimately, what I ended up doing was taking a shamanic healer training program. And I knew at the time, I was like, this isn't it, right? Like I don't feel called to do healing work with people, but it was like the closest thing I could find. And I was like, maybe there's going to be a clue or a key here, which it was. It really was, going through the process of understanding like how to channel with spirit and again, same thing, even just being able to share those messages and get validation and those types of things. But it just like opened up the floodgates for the spirits to be able to come in and say, here's all the things that we've been wanting to say, or here's all the clarity that, where before I was kind of like, okay, I kind of hear you saying this, but I don't really know what that means. Right. And well, that still happens sometimes, but like really turning it into a two-way conversation. And that was when they actually came in really strongly just to say, we want you to do property readings. I was like, I don't even know what that is. Right. And they showed me, they taught me how to be able to connect with the spirits of the land on a particular piece of land in order to do a reading and share that information and then do healing work. And it really did align with what I learned in the course, right? So, but instead of doing healing work on a person, you're doing healing work on the land. And there's just a lot of similarities. There's a lot of unique things about the land, but enough similarities that what I was learning through the program, I was able to apply and experiment with and figure that out. So that was really the big shift for me, where I was like, okay, now I get what's happening and I understand who these players are who are coming and talking to me, and I know what they want me to do next.
That's wonderful. Speaking with a lot of different people about their experiences and their journey, I do find that a lot of people have stepping stones. I mean, I think we all do, right? I mean, like we're kind of awakened to something, and we know that there's something deeper, there's something mysterious and magical and unseen, and then it's whatever, we just have to be patient, right? And then something falls into our path and we go, oh, and then like you said, this may not be it, but it is part of it, and it will help me get closer, and then something else. And then we just build from there and just follow and being open.
Yeah, it's the breadcrumbs, right? All you got to do is just pick up the next breadcrumb. You don't have to know, where you're headed yet.
And I'm sure and the way I feel at this point in my life, and perhaps you as well, is like, I still don't know what the final destination is.
Oh, I don't think we ever do.
Yeah, like,
and that's the fun of the journey that I've discovered, right? And I think I'm like, I was probably like so many of us, right, at the beginning or earlier on, where it's just like, well, what does that specifically mean? And how does that apply? And what am I supposed to do? And what was that? I need to interpret that dream and what, all of those pieces. And then over time, especially as you have the experiences of like, oh, that thing from 3 years ago just now made sense, right? Or like you realize the scale at which things play out. And the number of moving pieces sometimes in your own life that have to happen before you're like, well, I had to learn that before I could understand this. And the more you can kind of, release the need to know and release the need to be right, right? Like there's so many things where I thought I understood something and then later I'm like, oh my God, now I feel so dumb. Like, like this is what they were trying to tell me. I just didn't understand. And, just feel like it's okay. It's okay if I don't know. It's okay if the meaning isn't clear yet, or the message is still coming through, or I'm still learning a lesson about that, or whatever the case may be. When I need to know, I'll know. And that makes the whole thing a lot. It takes the pressure off, number one, but it also just makes it more fun because you're like, it's okay. I don't know. That's just the journey. And I'll like say, all I have to do is pick up the next breadcrumb when it comes along.
Yeah, it like you said, it's playful, it's fun, it's adventurous. Yes, we can get a little myself personally very frantic or frustrated that I don't understand this kernel of information.
Right.
But it is when you do kind of relax and be more lighthearted, it is definitely so much easier and you just enjoy it and you see where it takes you, the flow. Do you journal?
I do. Yes, quite a bit. In both, actually, I'd say in both ways. On the one hand, I do the artist way practice of the morning pages, right? Of just getting everything out of my head, which the longer I've done it, the more, value I see in like, oh yeah, that's the clutter, right? And sometimes there's things that
Yeah.
come in that, but I try to focus it more on clearing space for other things. And then separately and specifically to this work, I do more like automatic writing type of channeling with the spirits. So when I do have a specific question or want to do a reading or whatnot, I really do sit down with a pen and a notebook and let the information come through and kind of ask and answer, in the notebook as I go.
Yeah. So when you mentioned something about, so I'm just curious, or even just any kind of experiences that you think are valuable, that there's some message for you. I'm curious, like, do you have that kind of journaling where you can look back and go, oh, that dream from 3 years ago was telling me I was going to do this?
I wish I was better at that. I really do. I am not particularly adept at dream documentation or interpretation. And if I wrote them down more and went back, I think I would find a whole lot more. I tend to like tell a friend or tell somebody like, I had the weirdest dream. And then they'll bring it back to me later. Remember that dream you had? Like, oh, that's interesting. I probably should have written that down. But I do have recurring themes with dreams. Like I have mountain lion dreams regularly. And so, or, a couple
Cool.
times a year, but I always know like when I have that dream, like, oh, something important's coming or there's something, to pay attention to. And
Ah.
I go through periods of time where I'm learning things in my dreams. Where sometimes I remember them, sometimes I don't, but they're the kind of dreams, where I'm feeling frustrated that like, like I can't resolve or not necessarily resolve, like I can't figure something out or I can't do something correctly or I can't whatever. And then the dream ends. And so usually when I'm having those, I'll kind of figure it out in my waking time at some point where I'm like, oh, they're trying to show me, whatever I had a series where it was like they were trying to show me shape shifting. And so I kept having, but every dream is different. They weren't the same, but it was like, when I started putting them together, I realized, oh, in each dream, I would get to a point that I couldn't continue because like I was too big to get through or I was too short to get up there or I was too, like there was a physical limitation to do
Oh.
that. And so once I realized it and said, okay, next time I have a dream like that, I'm going to realize that I can change, and shapeshift. And sure enough, like I had the dream and in the dream, I was able to be conscious enough to be like, I needed whatever, turn into a bird and fly up there or whatever the case may be. And that was the last time I had the dreams. And so I think like, I get those where it's like a series trying to teach me something. And then once I get it, it's like, okay, that's it. And we move on.
Yeah, it's wonderful. It's wonderful. I've been journaling for my dreams for about 23 years. And
Oh, I bet
then
you
I
have a ton
started
of
realizing Oh, amazing. And yeah, no, it has been one of my main venues or avenues to gather information about my path and my journey. And it's just been a wonderful practice for me. And then I started realizing that, well, there's a lot of waking life things that I want to keep track
Yeah.
of as well, very unusual things,
Yeah.
right? Things that are out of the ordinary, and I would include them in the dream journal. So it's more of a spiritual journal, shall I
Wow.
say.
Yeah,
But
I love that.
it really is fascinating to look at like the dream life and waking life and how they're working together. Yeah. And
Do
I
you
love
have
your
a do you have a set period or like timings when you review them, or do you just know
Mhm.
like, oh, there's time, this is a time I need to go review?
Well, Amy, I try to now that, I'm an entrepreneur like yourself, we
Uh-huh.
make our own schedules.
Right.
So my time is the morning and when I
Mhm.
can. And if I don't have a dream to record, and many mornings there isn't, I will just kind of open my journal sometimes and it'll come to a page and I'll review that dream and look at it and I might see something that I never noticed before. So, yeah, the morning, I like to be slow in the morning with my coffee and just sit and
I'm
I'll pull a
saying.
couple of tarot cards and just have a like an ease into the day.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that practice.
Yeah. Yeah, I know a lot of people do the morning pages and I think those are a fabulous tool as well.
Yeah, it's really
So,
interesting what comes through and how at some point in the book it does, and of course it's after you've been doing this for, months or whatnot, it'll say, I remember it says something like, do you notice that about a page and a half in your thought process shifts or something? And so went back and looked, I'm like, it does. It's like you get about a page or so of ranting, dumping, complaining, mundane, whatever, and then all of a sudden you'll say, the reason I do that is, or something that you're
ah,
like, oh, it's like, it is. You have to get that, the
yes.
looping things, right? Like the looping thoughts and whatnot that have been bothering you. You get them out and onto paper. And then it's like the shift happens where you're like, oh, I have some insight about that now. Oh, I got an idea about that now, something different. And so, yeah, the longer I've done them, the more value I'm really seeing in that. And same thing, they initially say don't go back and look at them, and then there's a point where you're told to go back and look, and you can kind of see the shift, which is really, really remarkable to see. Like, oh yeah, like my tone has shifted the more that I do this. So yeah, very fascinating. I think journaling in all forms is really helpful because and I suggest students do this a lot as well with these types of things, especially like meditation practices and whatnot, of like writing it down, because so much of what we do is in the ethers, right? It's not in the physical. And so we're, especially in working with the spirits of the land and that type of thing, right? We're taking beings who are in another plane of existence and are often, unless it's a tree or something like they're often not tangible to us, and moving that energy into the physical world. And so anything we can do that takes kind of the non-physical and makes it physical really helps anchor it into the earth, especially when we're doing healing work. And so even just writing out, what you're seeing, what you're hearing, what you're feeling, whatever, and putting it on paper really helps make the physical of that work real in our
Oh,
plane of
yeah.
existence.
That is just a gem. That is really wonderful. Yeah, it's so true. And I for anyone watching, listening, the book we're referring to for the morning pages is called The Artist's Way by Julie Cameron, I believe is her name.
Yes. Julia Cameron, I think.
Julia, okay,
Yeah.
and yeah. So if anyone is interested in getting that, I know it's been very, very helpful to many people that are on
It's
the
so fascinating because
self
I
development.
think I think she says it in the book, but it's not overly clear. It's more about like, restoring your, the artist within, the creator, the creative within, which has way more applications, right, than just like making art. But what you realize when you get into it is it's an inner child healing, right? The process is a matter of like reclaiming that creative child within. And so if you embark on the process, that's what you're embarking on is inner child work, but it's really quite magical once you dive into it.
And, when you think about it, like I come from a feng shui background. That was kind of my stepping stone, not Reiki. It was feng shui. And then I really got immersed in the 5 elements of feng shui and how those elements are within all of us, have personality traits. And when I started really diving deep into that, I realized that really it is who we were as children. That's our true authentic self until all the judgments, all of the exterior environment impacts us and we feel we need to change who we truly are.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Anything that we can do to go back and find that, whether it's what we like to do when we were kids or, the activities or ideas we had or whatever, like it really does still come forward in us in a very authentic way as adults.
Wow. Yeah. Well, I mean, you did tell me about laying in the clover field, watching the clouds go by, and being a child of the 70s, I remember laying on my friends' lawns in the summer and just looking up and seeing all the clouds and just hanging out because we didn't have electronic devices or anything. But a question that I ask people sometimes, and we can cut this out if it doesn't resonate or nothing comes to mind, so no pressure. But do you recall the very first memory you have as a child?
Not strongly. And I have one that I think is a memory, but I have a photo of it. And so I think maybe it's just the photo. Maybe I don't have a memory of it. I'm not sure. But I have a memory of being in the front yard with my grandmother who lived in another state. So she, must have been visiting. But I remember the only thing that's really clear about it is really like the plants, right? There were like these very lush plants and large leaves and just being outside, being kind of surrounded by that. But I don't know the context and I don't know. And like I said, I realized at some point that I have a photo of this. Maybe I just saw it in a photo. But that's as far back as I can kind of pull out.
Yeah. Do you remember how old?
I couldn't have been more than 2-ish.
Yeah.
Somewhere in there.
That's pretty cool, Amy. And I do think that, I think it feels to me like you have a memory that's only more concrete because of that physical evidence.
Having the physical, tool,
But oh, that's beautiful. That's perfect. I find that most people that I do ask that question to have something that is connected to the natural world. A memory.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful. So is there another story that you would like to share of something that was profoundly moving to you? Anything that is just bubbling up that wants to be shared?
I think, and I'm trying to think if I have a specific story, to go along with it, but I think really what's been so remarkable to me about this work is understand, well, there's so many ways I could go with it, but like really feeling so supported by the nature spirits, the spirits of the land, and understanding how involved and how woven into our lives they are, whether we're conscious of them or not. It always makes me laugh when people say, I don't really understand what you do, or I don't really believe in what you do, but those same people, if I say, do you have a favorite tree? Will usually not just have a favorite tree, but have a name that they call the tree, right? Where it's like, oh,
I love
maybe
it.
you do, right? And how many people really have a touching story of, as you're saying, whether it's from childhood or even just a different times in their adulthood, where they've been really deeply touched by element of nature, whatever that is. And, I think that I have come to realize at some point that for whatever reason, and maybe just, my upbringing and being in nature regularly as a child, I feel inherently safe in nature, right? And when I lived in Montana, people always say, I can't believe you like go up on the side of the mountain in this trail by yourself. And what about, bears? And what about if your car breaks down? And what about, and I'm like, I don't know. I just feel safe. I feel protected. I take precautionary measures to try and make sure that, I'm extra safe and protected. But I don't have that concern. And I realize how many people in our culture now don't feel that way and don't that's not their base, operating in the world. It's just feeling like that they feel safe in nature. And so really being able to share some of, these experiences and share these types of things and even just to show it's okay to trust in nature, right? It's okay to see what happens, right? Again, with it, right? Like if I'm going to go into bear country, I do take bear spray, but also the spirits always laughed at me about that. Like, why would you take? I'm like, well, seems safe, right? Seems like what I should do, but it's not like a license to go be, a crazy person without any thought of what could happen to you or being prepared for those things. But just also feeling like it's okay for me to go be in nature by myself, which is when you really have the opportunity to hear some of those subtle messages. Nature is so, or can be so subtle in how it communicates, which is why it's so easy for people to blow off and think, I made that up. That, that was from a book I was reading the other day, and that's why I had that idea pop into my head. Or they, oh, that was my idea. Well, maybe the tree whispered it to you, right? And so there are so many opportunities when we're able to get outside, even in our own backyards, and just be quiet and be alone. And as you say, even, as children, to be away from the screens and just lay in the yard. So much more has the opportunity to flow through to us, and our subtle awareness can really pick it up in very different ways when our phone isn't in our hand and we're not in front of a screen.
Yeah. Okay, and I see that little cutie back there
I
amongst
she
your
doesn't make
singing
much
bowls.
I know, she's scared of them, and then she does. And then she'll get in there and do that. So I was on a call once, and
So sweet.
I don't know how she bunked them together once, and they, chimed right in the middle of the call. And I'm like, well,
Oh, I wish that happened. Oh,
something to
she's
say.
so
Well,
cute.
give her a minute. You never know.
So cute. Oh,
Yeah.
Oh, what's her name?
Elsa.
Elsa.
Yes.
So cute.
So
So Amy, as we wrap up our time together today, it went so fast.
yeah.
Are there any last words you would like to share with the listeners today?
Oh, it was. No, I feel good about what I've shared. There's anything else
Okay.
that you'd like to ask?
Sure. So your Earth Tenders Academy is
Yep.
in ongoing enrollment, I understand.
Yes,
So
it's
at any
ongoing.
point,
And yeah, you can join at any time. And so it is, but I usually kind of get groups started every month or so and kind of have a welcome call and get everybody started. But yeah, it's an opportunity to really focus on a more nature, earth-based style of communication and healing work from a shamanic perspective.
oh, beautiful, beautiful. Thank you for the work that you do. And
Thank you.
all of the lives that you touch through your social media.
Oh, thank you so
It
much.
really does help raise the energy and the frequency of this planet.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Happy to do it.
All right.
Please hit the subscribe button so that you'll know when we publish another inspiring episode. Check out my book, The Enchanted Earth, available wherever online books are sold. Thank you and have a magical day.